Hello ma'am, in this reporting, I will discuss to you about textiles in the Bronze Age. Mesopotamia was a typical wool-producing country of antiquity. It is the first likely evidence for wool production and is found in Asian written texts. The word Mesopotamia is formed from the ancient word meso, means between or in the middle of, and potamos means river. It is named Mesopotamia due to its location between the river Euphrates and Tigris. Before 2000 BC, spinning and weaving of wool was originally a female occupation. Spinning and weaving are two steps in the production of textiles. Spinning is a process of making thread out of raw fibers, and weaving is a process of taking threads and making them into cloth. But by 2000 BC, male weavers are mentioned together with the fullers. Fullers is a person whose occupation is fulling cloth. Bleachers and dyers. Dyers is a person whose trade is dyeing of cloth or other materials. Before, wool was plucked from the sheep with a knife, but by 1000 BC, shears came into use. By completely detaching a fleece, the shears doubled the wool production per animal. Sheep shearing is a process by which woolen fleece of a sheep is cut off. In Egypt, sheep and other animals were considered unclean. Therefore, their wool was reserved for outer garments which did not touch the skin. Egypt was the typical linen-producing country. It helped people to be comfortable in the subtropical heat. Linen is made from the flax plant by spinning the fibers from the stem of the plant. The processing of flax was fully known by 3000 BC. In northern Mesopotamia, the only agreement of all the people involved accepted designation for cotton is the only use of indirect ways of expressing trees bearing wool. The expression appears in two passages of a cylinder describing the fifth military campaign of the King Sennacherib. King Sennacherib describes the exotic plants he had been growing in the garden of his new palace, which may have inspired the legend of the Hanging Garden. According to the king, the fibers from these trees were collected to make textiles. They plucked trees bearing wool and wove it into clothing. Pasabot ana, dili probably naga-exist ang word na cotton sa kato na time kay ang king nagamit lang siya og indirect ways para ma-express to niyang trees bearing wool. In Egypt, it was not introduced as a material for textile until the Greco-Roman period when it was brought from the Sudan. The fourth textile fiber of antiquity was silk. The first is wool, linen, cotton, and silk. On the island of Kos, there was a native silk which used silk from the cocoon of an indigenous moth. Silk from Kos was famous for its lightness and transparency, bisag gamay lang ang iyang production. But some 2 centuries, Chinese silk was imported to Alexandria. The spinning of fibers was well understood as was weaving. It is necessary to spin the fiber because when fibers are spun, they form a coherent wall and it keeps them together. Dyeing and bleaching were practiced in both countries, such as the famous sea purple. In a certain city, a large group of sheep in the surrounding hills to produce the wool to be dyed out with a special local product. Thank you po, ma'am.